revealed the GOP jobs plan. It is good to have you on the program, Mr. Speaker. Thanks for joining us.
Maria, good to be with you.
So I want to get to the details of your jobs plan, but last week, of course, we know that the president unveiled his jobs plan. I was reading through the speech just a little while ago. He said, pass this plan at least 14 times. Mr. Speaker, will you pass the president's jobs plan?
Well, I think there are some parts of the president's plan where we can find some common ground. Right now, the Congressional Budget Office is looking at the president's plan. I'm sure that the various committees here in Congress will do their appropriate review of his plan, and then we'll begin to figure out, all right, what really will get the economy moving again and help create jobs.
Where are the similarities? Where are the differences? Can you walk us through whether it be tax reform, regulation, what's wrong with the president's plan, or what would not you would not be poised to pass, and where you have common ground?
Well, his $420 billion worth of tax hikes is something we're probably not going to be too favorable about. Raising taxes at this point in our economy will help kill jobs, and that's not what we're trying to do here. Secondly, to have permanent tax increases to pay for temporary spending probably doesn't make a lot of long-term economic sense either. What job creators want in America is they want some certainty about where things are going, and it's regulations, it's tax reform, and it's getting our debt under control.
Let me ask you about tax reform first, because I think many people were hoping for something a little more comprehensive. Tax reform that takes away loopholes, ensures that everyone pays their fair share, but also doesn't overburden those that are actually creating jobs. So what, in your view, should tax reform look like?
Well, I think if we're going to do tax reform, we ought to do it all. We ought to do personal tax reform. We ought to do corporate tax reform. Dave Camp, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, has had an aggressive schedule of hearings all year working on this. There's a lot of groundwork that can be laid. And I don't know that the Joint Select Committee on Deficit Reduction can do tax reform, but they can help lay the groundwork for real reform of our tax code.
There are some companies that are not paying taxes. They are getting away with no tax because of these loopholes. Do you favor changing the loopholes, eliminating the loopholes, and taking corporate taxes lower?
We believe that the target should be about 25% on the corporate side and the personal side. And it's not just big C corporations. Regardless of the entity, whether it's an S-corp, an LLC, a partnership, all of them ought to be taxed at the same rate. And I know that the members of the Deficit Reduction Commission, they've got a big job to do. They've done a great job. But we can't expect miracles out of them. But I do think they can lay the groundwork for real tax reform.
Mr. Speaker, there are some circles that feel that the Republican Party has become the no party, that everything the president says is no from the Republican Party. There's also a feeling that the Tea Party is basically rolling over you. Now, the Tea Party obviously has become a disruption and in many ways has forced Washington to look at the issues that need to be looked at. How are you going to convince the American people that the Republican Party is not the no party and that the Tea Party is not rolling over you?
Well, the Tea Party wants the same thing I want. They want less spending in Washington. They want to stop this regulatory onslaught that's underway. And they want a fairer, flatter tax code. There's nothing radical about what they're asking for. The only thing radical is they want it done now. Well, I'd like to do it all now, too, but it's just not the way our system of government works. When it comes to the party of no, the president tried that all year. Yes, it's going to be no to higher taxes. It's going to be no to excessive regulations. But we've had ideas all year long. But we've passed dozens of bills that will help get our economy moving and help job creators. They're all sitting over in the United States Senate. Job creators in America are on strike. They're on strike because they look at the excessive regulations coming out of this administration, and they're scared to death. They don't know what the rules are going to be.
I speak to CEOs all the time, and they say that the regulatory environment is, in fact, holding them back. Bob Ben-Moshe from AIG the other day told me he doesn't even know if he's going to be part of SIFI, too big to fail, because Dodd-Frank, while it is the law of the land, the rules are being written as we speak. Why is that? What can you do specifically, your party do specifically, to alleviate this regulatory burden?
Well, that's why we've passed dozens of bills already this year. When you look at our agenda, as outlined by our majority leader, Eric Cantor, we've laid out 10 or 12 bills that will continue to roll back excessive regulations. Today on the House floor, we passed a regulation prohibiting the National Labor Relations Board from deciding where companies can locate a plant. This stems out of the Boeing decision, where Boeing decided to build a plant in South Carolina. And the National Labor Relations Board says, no, you have to build it somewhere else. Now, I don't understand this. Companies can go to China and create jobs, but they can't go to South Carolina and create jobs. What kind of government is this?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good point, because, you know, the country has never been more divided than it is today, and you've got both sides back and forth. So what can you do in that regard in terms of union pressure, in terms of the story at Boeing is a very good one to bring up. Will Boeing be able to use that plant?
Well, I certainly hope so, and I can tell you that we've passed this bill today. We're hopeful that the Senate will take it up. We're going to do everything we can to stop this regulatory onslaught that's underway. It is hurting our economy and is hurting the ability of the American people to find jobs.
How much accountability are you taking for all of this and your party? A recent Gallup poll showed that the approval rating of Congress stands at 15%. That's up slightly from last month's low of 13%.
Listen, the Congress has been America's favorite whipping boy for 200 years. We're dealing with a system of government unlike any other in the world, where we've got two separate or three separate but equal branches of government. It was designed not to work. It was designed to keep our government from getting too big. And I can tell you, as someone who's in charge of an institution designed not to work, my job is to try to make it work. But to get 435 people to agree here in the House is one thing. Then we've got to get 100 in the Senate to agree. And then the president gets to decide whether he wants to sign it or veto it. It's a difficult process, but it is what it is. And all I can tell the American people is that I'm going to try to do the right thing every day.
Why do you think things have become so toxic? The debt ceiling debate was just very frustrating for the American people, and it created people and companies doing nothing for an entire month. Why have things turned so toxic between the two parties?
Well, I don't know that it's toxic. I've had a lot of conversations with the president, a lot of negotiations on the debt ceiling and other issues this year. And it's almost as if we're two groups of people from two different planets who barely understand each other. You know, I come to this job having run a small business. I've got 11 brothers and sisters. My dad owned a bar. And I've done every rotten job there ever was and was very glad to have all of those jobs. You know, the president and his staff, most of them have never been in the private sector. And so we've got these competing ideas. I'm a big believer in the free enterprise system. The president and his staff tend to believe that government has more control over our economy. And so there are big philosophical disagreements. The key is, how do you find enough common ground to move forward? And we found common ground. It took us a while. It was difficult. And what I look for every day is, what is it that we can do? What is it we can do to help get the American people back to work? Because that's what the American people want.
So what would be a realistic time frame for passing a jobs bill, a growth bill, whatever you want to call it? Well,
we've passed a lot of jobs bills already this year. The United States Senate has to deliver something at some point. The president could get behind some of these jobs bills. But let's understand something. We need long-term economic growth. We need real growth. We don't need any more gimmicks. We don't need any more stimulus packages. What we need is sustained economic growth to get our economy going again and get the American people back to work.
I want to ask you about two issues that we haven't touched on yet, and that's immigration as well as trade. We have been waiting for free trade agreements to be signed to open up borders with Colombia, with Panama, Korea. Where does this stand?
The president has yet to submit them to the United States Congress. and we cannot deal with these trade agreements until they're submitted by the administration.
I understand that there are lines of people trying to get visas. Oftentimes, CEOs say that we are turning the best and brightest away. We have them coming to our great universities and then being forced to go back. Is there a way to get these millions of people who want to come to America, to let them in legally, be part of this system so that they can pay taxes, buy homes, and spend money in this economy?
Well, remember something, Maria. The United States allows 1 million people from around the world into our country legally every year. As a matter of fact, we have more legal immigration than the rest of the world combined. Having said that, there are a lot of students who come here from overseas to go to college. They are very bright people from around the world, and yet when they get out of college, we send them home. And so a lot of software companies, biotech companies, can't find the people that they need, and they're forced to take their work and ship it overseas because the people aren't here. Well, that makes no sense. There's an H-1B visa program that allows those students to stay here. That program or something similar ought to be considered so that the best and brightest from around the world who go to school here ought to be able to stay here.
Let me ask you about the frustration out there and people very frustrated with the way the economy is moving right now. But at the same time, they don't see an alternative on the Republican side. Who in your party do you believe is the best candidate to win in 2012?
We've got a lot of good candidates. And one of them will win the nomination, and that's the one I'll support. You know, as Speaker of the House, it's not my job to tell the American people or Republican voters what to think. There are a lot of good candidates, and I wish them all well.
But as the President said the other night, people can't wait 14 months. Are you prepared to go one-on-one with the President to knock out legislation on jobs to get this economy moving again?
I believe that there are some areas that we'll be able to find some common ground. We've got a lot of work to do this fall, and I'm hopeful that we can work together to do what's in the best interest of the American people.
What's your timing?
This fall, we've got a lot of work to do.
Mr. Speaker, good to have you on the program.
Nice to see you.
Thank you so much. Speaker John Boehner. I'll send it back to you. Bill.
All right. Very good, Maria. Great job. Thank you. And as you're talking, the Dow holding steady here.